Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalam ala Rasulillah. Alhamdulillah. This is still episode 46, but we're now into part two of the interview in which Al-Hajj Abu Ja'far al-Hanbali is interviewing me about my book and related topics. So let us continue without much further ado.
Okay, so when we last left off, we had been discussing your conversion into Islam, that it was a coalescing of several different factors rather than just one specific sudden moment. Then we also got to the point where you had gone to Morocco and I believe returned back.
Yeah, that was after a year.
Okay, so after having gone to Morocco and then returned back, what was your mind state and what was your sort of thought process at that point?
Um, okay, well, Alhamdulillah. Because I spent a year in Morocco and I studied Arabic intensely because we had 20 hours a week in class covering topics such as grammar, reading, writing, speaking, listening, and translation.
Did you attain fluency at that time?
That's a big claim to make, but yeah, I got to a point where I could read and I could use a dictionary properly. So I covered the Ajurumiyya with a commentary from a
Right.
private teacher. I did another book on writing skills. Then I did another big book called Al-Wadih fi Qawaid al-I'rab. It's a book from Syria. It covers parts of the Ajurumiyya, but plus Qatl al-Nada, plus the Alfiya and the Sha'rawi Naqil. So it's
So are these books designed to give you a foothold in Arabic or to give someone the building blocks on the way to fluency? Can someone go through these books and then understand, say, television programming and radio and basic entertainment, or is it a specific goal in mind that these books get you
no,
to?
these books are for where you want to get your Arabic up to a level where all you would need is a dictionary in order just to approach a text, especially something say in fiqh or hadith or tafsir or maybe history.
Okay, so is it just specialized to that, or could someone go into literature or
Yeah,
arts
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
entertainment? They could read the paper.
Yeah, yeah,
And,
absolutely. Because that once you have those, because the Edrumiyya alone with the shop, that's enough. That
right,
should be enough to get you to a reading level,
right,
where you can then where you just need a dictionary. You just need to read and then read and read to build your vocabulary.
right.
That's what I had in mind. Because I remember reading. I came across actually when I was in Fez because I used to spend a lot of time in the little library that they have, this Arabic Language Institute, and I came across this weird coincidence. I came across a book. I think the guy's name was Glenn Watkins. It was like Introduction to an Arabic Grammar,
Okay.
and he's from the University of Toronto. So my dad knew about him.
Okay, so that's your old stomping ground, I
Yeah, yeah.
suppose.
So I found this book, but the whole book was actually written in English. There's no Arabic in it. There's just if it's Arabic, it's transliterated. But one of the things he says in the introduction, which kind of struck me, is he said, "You're not learning Arabic to speak to Arabs because they're probably talking about the same empty stuff you talk about in English."
Hmm.
And then he said, "What you want is you want access to the literature."
Okay.
Because they said the Arabs have a rich literature. That's what you want access to. You want access
Right.
to their poetry. You want access to their history books, to their
So he's looking past conversing with the local man on the street
yeah,
and rather looking at sort of this prodigious line of literature that's sort of come down to
yeah.
us.
So now I didn't just toss it to the side about okay, no, I don't want to speak to Arabs. No, I want to speak to Arabs, obviously, but my greater priority was to be in a position where I could read. I want to access sources.
Okay. Now, having studied Arabic, you're in Morocco, you're living there. With what you learned of Arabic, were you able to converse with Arabs on the street?
Yes, I was within a few months. I was able to, but obviously, I had to. We also spent 1 month learning the Moroccan dialect,
Right.
which I picked up a bit. But I tried to use like Fusha more. I got funny stares. People understood me,
Yes.
but I got funny stares.
You know, there's this common idea that speaking Fusha Arabic or dialectically accurate Arabic is somehow impossible for people in the street to understand, and thus there's no point in learning it. Did you find that there was any benefit or any point in learning this particular way of speaking Arabic in order to address people on the street, or did you find yourself woefully outmatched and unable to communicate?
No, no, no. I could definitely communicate. I could get by. I could do my shopping. I could order stuff in restaurants. Um, and that idea of that learning classical Arabic is useless. No, because there's something in the middle between, say, the dialect and the actual classical Arabic is something called Modern Standard Arabic. Modern Standard
MSA.
Arabic, MSA, is closer to Fusha,
Yeah.
and that's what they use on television. That's what they use in the newspapers. So if you're just going to study a dialect, you're going to be stumped. You're going to be stuck.
Because you can sometimes hear this old canard that keeps being used by certain factors that yes, learning to speak Fusha is like speaking Shakespearean English.
No, that's nonsense.
which is actually incomprehensible to today's English speaking audience.
No,
You have
that's-
specialized
No,
dictionaries.
that's absolute nonsense. That's absolute nonsense because, and again, I mean, learning Shakespearean English that means you'd only have access to Shakespeare and literature from his time onwards. See, the amazing thing about Arabic is once you get your basics down, you know Fusha, you now have access to basically well over 1,000 years of literature.
Okay.
It reads the same way.
Right.
With the Arabic I've learned, I can read Imam al-Ghazali, I can read Imam al-Nawawi, I can read Imam al-Shafi'i. It's not,
Right.
even though they're from completely different
You
times.
can read the Al-Sharq al-Awsat newspaper and
Yeah,
Al-Haram and all these other ones.
Yeah,
You don't have
exactly.
really any
That's how Fusha
struggles.
works. And we even did a module on that. I mean, we did a module on, as part of the translation classes we did, and part of the speaking listening classes we did. We did newspaper. We covered media Arabic, these kind of things.
Okay.
How do you read it? How do you read an Arabic newspaper? What words do you look out for?
Now is Morocco solely an Arab country, or what is the sort of demographics of the people there?
Oh, it's a mixture of Arabs and Berbers. A mixture of Arabs and Berbers. I mean, so Arabic is the lingua franca, but then people also speak what's called the Derija, like that's the local dialect. They also speak French. Well, it's more like Moroccan French. Also there's Amazighi, which is like the Berber language. But it's a nice mixture of people. But Arabic is the dominant language.
Right. Okay, so you arrived back from Morocco. What were you thinking, or what was your mindset? What were you set to do once you got back? What were you trying to do? When you arrived back, you've now got sort of the toolbox with the Arabic in it and the access to it and access to text, everything else. So what is your plan? Where are you going now?
What do you mean in terms of Arabic, or?
Yeah, well, you just arrived back. Now that you've arrived back, where are you thinking about heading in terms of your life? Do you want to now study in more detail? Are you're content now?
All right, I understand. So while I was in Morocco, I did have access to. I did meet some older Muslim brothers from the Anglosphere. Some of them come out of the United States. Some of them come from the UK, and those brothers, I prefer to spend time with them than people in my class because they were older. They seemed a lot more focused. And the fact that they were also in that environment of Morocco where they were just studying Deen, studying fiqh, studying Arabic, memorizing Quran, and just getting on with it. And what really struck me about that, and I really liked about being in Morocco, is I thought here people are just doing Islam. They're living it, they're doing it, and there's none of this crazy politics that you find in the UK or in the Anglosphere. I'm not seeing groups and arguing, especially at university campuses. You know about it just as well as I do. Just the nonsense that happens at university campuses. People just arguing about, bickering about everything. Everything's just a political demonstration or
so
political argument.
people are sort of concerned there, or people are concerned in Morocco about living Islam.
Yeah,
they're
just being Muslim
they're
and
too
getting on
busy
with it.
being Muslim
Yeah.
than sort of performing, if you will.
Yeah.
Showing you how Muslim they are.
Yeah, and all that, what we call in modern parlance virtue signaling.
Right.
So I really caught on to this. I thought, wow, these brothers are really doing stuff, and they're obviously they're trying to do what, say, students in the Qadawin would be doing, or other students of knowledge. They're just getting on with life and getting on with their Islam. So at that time, and I think this was part of sort of the, like I say, the cool thing back then. I thought, okay, and looking at those brothers, I thought, okay, maybe I could go back to Leeds for a couple of years, finish my degree, finish my Arabic degree and finish my history degree, because I'm doing both at the same time. And then after that, maybe I can then take off and go to Morocco again, or maybe go to Syria or Egypt, because obviously I want to do Shafi fiqh, my Shafi and fiqh, and it's Maliki in Morocco. I love the Moroccans, but I can't study fiqh with them. Well, I did. Yeah. I did. I read a lot of Shafi fiqh with a Moroccan teacher. And then I thought, okay, I could do that, and then maybe like somewhere along the line, I would come back to England and maybe set up an institute or something like that. I remember this is 2002. I mean, this is way before YouTube and way before I set up a blog, and it's also way before a lot of bad things happen in the Anglosphere, which I talk about in my book.
Yeah. Now, when you get back now, what can you give us sort of an outline of your relation to Sheikh Tahir and how that developed?
Oh, mashallah, you remember him. Yeah. So that sort of developed, that's the masjid I used to go to most of the time, because that masjid, that's it's called Leeds Grand Mosque. That masjid is where the vast majority of Arabs in Leeds pray.
Right.
And it's probably the most welcoming place for converts, for sisters as well, whether they're convert or not. It's a a family-friendly atmosphere.
Right.
Right?
Why would the other masjids not qualify for that?
Because they don't have sister sections. They don't have sister sections, and they don't.
Okay, what is a sister section in a masjid?
Well,
What
I
is that?
want to say sister. Well, we know. I mean, I have that article on my blog, Women in the Masjid. I mean, ideally, women should be at the back,
Right.
behind the men. But a lot of these other masjids, run by people from the Indian subcontinent, they don't have any facilities at all for women.
Right.
Well,
And the ones that do, they have these cordoned off areas called sister
yeah,
section.
because Leeds Grand Mosque, I wouldn't call it a sister section. What they kind of have is they have they have a massive glass balcony,
Okay.
for which they can just look on.
And they can access everything.
yeah,
They
they can
know
look
what's
down,
going
they can see the
on.
congregation.
They can take part in the worship.
Yeah.
Ask questions and such if needed to be.
Yeah.
And it's in public, so it's not off to the
Yeah,
side.
and it's the same. It's the same that I saw in Morocco. Like you had like women pray at the back in the Qaraween, and a lot of masjids in Fez. Some they pray to the side, but they have full access. They can
Okay.
hear everything that's going on. You would have to be absolutely crazy to try to prevent those women from going to the masjid. I mean, so when I was living in Morocco recently,
So no one ever tried to say, really women shouldn't be coming to the masjid or it's haram.
No,
one ever espoused anything.
not amongst the Arabs. Not amongst the Arabs. But the problem is all these other masjids that are run by people from the Indian subcontinent, there just weren't these facilities. And even if you did go in there, you'd get stared at. People just look at you like how do you get in here? It just was not comfortable.
Right. So as a comparison, then, what did you feel about sort of the Arab masjid in Leeds that you were going to at the time, and then sort of the layout of these Indo-Pak masjids that you were visiting?
What's the main difference, you think? Or?
Yeah. What are some of the sort of main differences that someone that's listening to us that would be trying to understand? Okay, well, what would be the difference? They're both Muslim.
Yeah.
So why would there be some type of difference?
Well, the Arab masjid, for starters, the Arab masjid, everything's the dominant language is Arabic, but they're also concerned with English. So one of the things I started doing in my final year of university, so this is like a year after I come back from Morocco, was Sheikh Tahir approached me and he said, "Would you like to translate the khutbah?"
Is this the first time you met him, or
No, I'd known him for a while because
Right.
I used to attend classes with him in the masjid. He used to do classes in Tajweed and
Okay.
other things like this. And sometimes I would sit next to him and do like a simultaneous translation.
Okay, all right. So he's speaking and you're just real time translating.
Yeah. We're doing stuff like that, especially towards like my last year of my degree. So then he asked me to do because the way they had it is he would deliver the khutbah in Arabic and then someone would stand up and do it in English.
Would it be word for word or mostly a summation?
Close to word for word. I was really meticulous. I would try to do word for word, but like Sheikh Tahir would say, "Listen, you've only got like one night." Like so, he would type his khutbah up Thursday night.
Right.
Give it to me, and so I've got 10 hours. I have to sleep in that time as well.
Yes.
So sometimes I was pulling all nighters. I was just trying to get it done.
getting it
Then I'd run to the university to print it out. Then I come back and
If you ask an Arab to do it, then you're just going to get the mukhtasar. He's not.
yeah, you got to be in a mukhtasar or it's just badly translated.
Yeah,
because I mean I'm not saying anything bad about the Arabs. I'm just saying
It's
that,
just people versus people.
yeah,
these
these,
types of
but
things,
and also the nature of
Gonna do the best they can.
the nature of translation that you translate into your native tongue.
Yeah.
That sounds more natural. When you translate outside your native tongue, it just doesn't always come across properly. So, or it doesn't come across as it should. So that was. So that's a big difference when you look at say an example of the Grand Mosque is the fact that they are trying to accommodate. They're prioritizing Arabic, which is the language of Islam, it's the language of revelation.
Sure.
And they're trying to accommodate English speakers.
Okay.
Which, so you can compare that to some of these other masjids, their priority is Urdu, and they're not really doing much in English.
Okay. So Sheikh Tahir was sort of able to facilitate access to further learning after you arrived back from Morocco.
Yeah.
And he provided a means of continuing your study.
Yeah, so I'm studying Arabic. What happened with the Arabic at the university is the department said, we can't teach you anything now when I got back.
Right.
Because they're like, okay, you've just gone ahead, and we don't really have anything to teach you. Because they brought in some teacher. I don't want to badmouth anyone, but it was a female teacher who came in. She's from an Arab country. I won't mention it because I don't want people to know who she is. But she came in, and she had mistakes in her grammar, and I was correcting her.
Right. They didn't offer you a post or say, listen.
Someone tried that. Someone tried to do that. Some guy in my class tried to do. They actually approached the department head and said, like, can we just give him the job? Just let him teach us. Right. And they're like, we can't do that. That's ridiculous. We can't have a guy who's still doing his BA.
What's going on here?
So alhamdulillah, what happened was there was an older teacher who'd come over from Riyadh. No, he was actually doing. He's a PhD. He's doing his PhD. And they brought him in, and they created like an advanced Arabic class.
Okay.
So they put me in with a couple of other Arabs, and I was just with them for 2 years.
Okay.
Doing media Arabic and a few other subjects, and that was really good. I benefited a lot from him.
Okay. All right. Now, during this time, I want to understand. You've come into this religion, so you've believed, you've come in, you've entered into the community. Now, I can say from what I've studied and what I witnessed that in the Jewish community, they usually will assign you a tzaddik or a ribbi or someone such as this. In certain groups of Christianity, they will give you what's called a god brother, someone that you get joined up with. What type of support system did you as a convert find among the Muslims? And before you answer that question, do you particularly take offense to being called a revert or a convert, or does it have any significance or even purpose for you?
Okay. Number one, as I mentioned in this book, I find the word revert to be an absolutely and utterly ridiculous term.
Right.
I think it's just plain stupid. Because revert, if you look up in the dictionary, revert has this idea of regression, denigration. It doesn't mean going backwards.
Right.
First of all, secondly, because that doesn't mean going back to something. It implies that an individual left Islam and came back.
Right.
Which is nonsense. Like I never made a conscious decision to leave Islam.
Right.
Right? Yes, kul mawlud ala fitra. Yes, every child is born with fitra.
Your parents make it.
Yeah.
Do whatever.
But I didn't make a conscious decision to leave Islam and then go back. So I find revert just I don't like the term at all. I just think it's ridiculous. Convert makes more sense, but I use that term sparingly, especially with regards to myself, because I have a whole chapter in the book called "You're Not a New Muslim Forever."
Right.
Because all the companions were converts.
Yeah.
You become a convert and you move on. That's not something that should be part of your identity forever.
So you've been a Muslim for what, 18 years now?
Yeah, 18. Yeah, I've just fasted 19 Ramadans.
Okay, so we'll say 19.
Yeah, it's almost half my life.
Do you still refer to yourself as a convert?
No, I never say that.
So you don't introduce yourself, I'm a Muslim convert?
No, absolutely not.
And people don't introduce you and say, oh, this is my friend Mehdi, he's a Muslim convert.
No.
Right.
I actually say that in the book. I actually say that when someone says to me, "Oh, I didn't know you were a convert," to me I take that as a praise.
Right.
I think that's a wonderful. It's like, oh, okay, alhamdulillah, the guy just sees me as I'm just a Muslim.
Just a Muslim doing your business, living your life.
Yeah, it's just part of who I am, and I get carry on with it. It's not this. It's not like this captain's armband or something that I wear around my elbow and flex. No.
Yeah.
So. Your second question is about support.
The second question is about what did you find among the Muslims? As the example I gave, normally if someone comes into the Chabad, which is a very rigorous form of Orthodox Judaism, they tend to find like the tzaddik or the ribbi. If it's certain forms of Christianity, you'll have your god brother because it's someone you both got baptized at the same time, or he's elder to you in Christianity, so he watches after you. Among the Muslims, I can't say about Islam itself, that's a different discussion, but among the Muslims, what did you find in terms of a support system? Okay, the short answer, nothing.
Right. The longer answer, because when I first became Muslim, so I started going. There were other brothers. There was no system in place. There were other brothers who were there. There were other older brothers who were converts who were helping here and there. And some of the brothers on the Arabic course were giving me advice and saying, you listen to this talk, or you could read this little book, or choose a madhab. That's why I started going that way. And then the same convert brother, he said to me at one point, he said, because I said, what madhab should I be? He said, well, I've noticed that you just raise your hands. Maybe try the Shafi madhab.
Right.
So
Just advised you of that.
yeah, so then I tried to look. Okay, I'll try to learn the Shafi method, but then I think I got a copy at one point of Reliance of the Traveler. Um, I did study for the first time. I won't tell many people this, but I did study for the first time. My first actual exposure to fiqh and theology, like as a class, was with the AICP.
Okay, so these are adherents to Sheikh Abdullah al-Harari al-Habashi.
Yeah,
He came from Harare in Ethiopia.
and so in Lebanon.
That's it, settled in Lebanon. There's things that are attributed to him, and then some things that we can't be sure
Yeah.
that are attributed to him. But what we can say of the organization that models itself after his name, he died about 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah.
What we can say about the organization that modeled themselves after him is that they have a very stringent attitude with regard to the topic of
Takfir.
Muslims being inside and outside of the
Yeah,
religion. Sometimes at the just the word of saying, okay, someone's said kufr, they've gone out of the religion, now they have to come back in.
Yeah.
It's very stringent.
Yeah,
so
so
what was that experience like?
That was quite weird. That was because on the one hand, I'm learning the basic fiqh, learning the basic theology, but then it's just, every week someone's a kafir. So
Right.
it's just really hard. Like, oh, so and so said that to you? Well, that person's a kafir. You better go up to him and tell him to say shahada again. It's just, so that, I was able to get out of that. I remember there's another older convert brother who sort of gently pulled me out of that.
How long were you with them?
I think this would be what's 5 months,
Right.
5 months in total.
That must have been a real trial.
Yeah, but it happened to be because there was a convert sister, because she was a new Muslim at the time, on my Arabic class, I remember, and then she said, "Oh, I'm Shafi. My husband's from Jordan. He's Shafi, so you can study with him."
Okay.
So I didn't know.
Yeah.
Just
You're looking to learn and trying to gather.
look to learn and try and put stuff together. I've only been a Muslim for a few months, so that's so well. But again, just while I was with them, like you have these red flags. Like, okay, why are they? That's like really, if you follow this logic through, the way these people talk, it's like everyone's a kafir.
No.
There are no Muslims left.
Right.
So yeah, I managed to pull it within 5 months, and they turned a bit creepy in their weird way. Just because I try to pull away, and then they're trying to find me, trying to call me.
What's going on? Where are you?
I don't know. I'll just patiently wait it out.
Do they knock on your door and come by your house?
Well, they were in a different city.
Oh, they're in a different city.
So
Okay.
alhamdulillah. But then again, that year end, that was one of my first year of Arabic. So still had a foundation with fiqh. I knew some basics. I knew some basic theology, and then I went to Morocco.
It seems to be a common theme that you'll see converts getting pulled into groups.
Yeah.
And sometimes they might go through one group or they might go through a medley of groups. In your life experience, why do you think that is?
Well, I have a whole article on my blog called what is it? Madness is rare in individuals. It's actually a quote of Friedrich Nietzsche, and because he talks about how there's madness is rare in individuals because madness is usually found in a group.
Okay.
And so this book was what I wrote. There was a review of the book, The True Believer by Eric Hoffer, and he talks about thoughts on the nature of mass movements. Why do people join? Greenpeace. Why do people join the Communist Party? Why do people join? A religious cult, or and you can throw in that. Why do they join? A Sufi tariqa. Why do they join a political organization? And
You equate joining a Sufi tariqa with a political organization in certain areas?
No. In some ways, in the sense that the
Partisanship?
Yeah, the common denominator here is that, and what Eric Hoffer said in his book, and I think it's very valid, is he said that people move from. He said, when you see some people, they move from one group to another, right? Even though the doctrines or beliefs of these groups are radically different, right? So someone might.
So the goal is belonging, rather than
exactly.
necessarily.
The goal is belonging to someone. And he says, what's wrong with these people is they fear an autonomous existence. These people fear an existence in which they have to be responsible for themselves. They have to tell themselves what to do. They have to do their own research, their own thinking.
Okay,
They don't want to do that. They prefer to be in an organization where someone's saying, no, do this, think this, say this.
Right, so they're looking for someone to sort of do the legwork.
Yeah.
But they can reap the rewards of whatever this may be.
So it can be anything from, say, Greenpeace to Jehovah's Witnesses or whatever.
Right, so it's not necessarily so when we're talking about these disparate groups, we're not always talking about doctrine. It's just the goal that we need to belong.
Yeah.
We need to be somewhere.
And I think what it comes down to, again, is, and this is a big part of the first chapter of my book, is the idea of conviction, right? So if someone becomes Muslim because they're convinced it's the truth, then once they're in Islam, they don't want to do anything. You don't want to take up a madhab or whatever unless you're sure that this is the truth. That's what you're after. You want to, is this what I'm supposed to be doing? Whereas if you come into Islam for the conviction plus something else, or maybe that other thing is not the main motive, such as you have social needs, you have emotional needs, you have psychological needs. Right. You want to be part of something.
You're swept into a movement.
You just get swept into a movement, right? Like, oh, these guys are taking me, and these guys are taking care of me. So and it's weird. It's like one day this guy could be with Hizb Tahrir or something, then the next day he's with the Naqshbandi Tariqa, then the next day he's with something. It's just weird.
He's just looking for it, whatever that thing is.
He's just looking for a feeling. He wants to feel. He wants to have a warm, fuzzy feeling inside. He wants to be taken care of, and that's what these people are doing. They're not actually looking at conviction.
So how were you able to? Because you only had it looks like only one run-in. How were you able to avoid the medley of groups that some converts often go through? Because I've seen, I've read, and I've heard of converts going through 3, 4, 5 groups, just this conveyor belt of these disparate sects and groups, and each one of them is more vociferous than the other, and sometimes they're cast out, and then they're faced with situations where they begin to wonder about their Islam. Can I hack it? Can I take it? They sort of slip into almost a John McEnroe phase of, all right, should I play really hard for 3-4 years and then hang up my racket? Yeah. So how were you able to avoid these type of things?
I would say because when I came into Islam, because I've been studying before, my intention was to study afterwards. That's why I took the degree in Arabic, and I just wanted to study and get to the bottom of things. And part of the reason why, or another part of the reason why I fell in with AICP is, number one, I'd been Muslim for a few months. Number two, I didn't know they were a group.
Okay.
I had no idea they were. I just thought that was just that's a fiqh teacher. That's the only way I saw it. And what helped that older brother pull me out of it was to show me, like, these guys aren't just your run-of-the-mill teacher. These guys are actually part of a group. These are part of a cult-like group. Okay. So when he showed that to me, I was like, oh God. Right. Get me out of here. So I just had.
So do you think the fact that you had the ability to access the source texts gave you also a unique advantage?
Oh, certainly in the later years, but even during my first year, you just how can I say it? I would say that I just had an aversion towards them. The way groups were, and when I see like a group of people, and they all talk the same way, they all sound the same way,
moving in the same way.
In the same way,
Sometimes even the cadence and the voice is similar.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. The same rhythm. It's a bit. And then you have to ask yourself the question: okay, what are these people actually doing? How far are they getting? And that's a point I put in my book. It's like when you're assessing a group, look at the followers. What are they actually accomplishing? How far are they getting? Are they developing over time? Are they progressing? So I was just put off by that stuff. I didn't see the intelligence behind it. I didn't see the wisdom behind it. I didn't see how those people were benefiting from it. I really had an aversion. And then being with AICP, when I didn't even know I was part of a group, and then when I left, I really had a strong aversion to it.
I mean, sometimes I hear some converts and even some people who are Muslims that are lifelong Muslims discussing converts to Islam. They'll sometimes say, Muslims as converts, they don't need to know about these groups. They don't need to know about all this stuff. I mean, Sunni, Shia, Salafi, Hanafi, what does all this stuff matter? Do converts that are coming into this religion, do they need to be concerned about groups, or is this just something that is in the soup once you taste it?
No, they need to know, because Islam, we have objective standards. In Islam, we have objective standards. There's something called correct theology. Okay. There's Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah. There's correct theology. There's correct doctrine, correct application, correct action.
Were you made aware of these things upon your entrance into Islam, or did you have to find these things out on your own?
Not entirely on my own. Some brothers were there to point, like from Arabic class. Some brothers who were like Hanafis, right. And some of these older convert brothers I mentioned before, they were there to to direct things in the right way. But again,
Was Sheikh Tahir a positive influence as well?
oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. But he was mostly for Arabic and I would say Tajweed.
Yeah. You did a small creed text by Al-Ghazali, didn't you, with him?
No,
There's a small text you did with him?
I did. Because there was another brother who became Muslim in my final year, and he wanted to study Maliki fiqh, so I studied a bit of Maliki fiqh with him,
Right.
like just a few lessons from the Risala and al-Qarawani with a shar. And the Shaykh was called al-Azhari. I don't know who exactly it was, but it's meant to be a famous shar of the Risala.
Right.
So I covered a bit of creed in there.
Okay, all right. Because I thought for sure we were discussing some time back, and you did like a small text or something from maybe his Ihya Ulumuddin from Al-Ghazali, and you covered that with Sheikh Tahir. I thought that we did.
No, I don't recall.
Different
that.
one. Different
No,
one.
wasn't.
Okay, so looking at all of this as someone who's come into all of this sort of, you come into the religion, you've been given the light, you've been given the guidance, your heart then responds to that guidance. You come into the religion, and it's like all this stuff just comes at you. Stuff is just thrown at you.
Yeah.
So there's not any type of formal support system in place for converts in the Anglosphere that we know of. So then the question that I would ask then going after this is, why are people in the Anglosphere becoming Muslim, and what are your concerns?
Okay. Yeah, just to combine this question, the last question, because I was actually interviewed by the New York Times. It was in 2000. It was after I moved to Nottingham, and I explained this thing. And I just said, because they asked me, because there was some sort of, what was it? There was that supposed terror plot that was foiled.
That's right.
And the news came out that it was loads of converts, and again, I was living in Nottingham. I'd started that organization called Nottingham Muslims as a convert support network. And I'd previously been in Leeds. I was part of something called Leeds New Muslims.
Wait a minute, hold on. You started a new converts organization in Nottingham?
Yeah.
Okay. Why?
Okay. Because, as I explained in that article, that when converts come into this deen, come into Islam, they have no support network, and therefore a lot of these groups, especially some of the more politically minded ones, they see converts as easy targets.
So in the Anglosphere, you're sort of a sheep, and you've got wolves out there.
Yeah, it's like, oh, he doesn't know about Islam, grab him. I mean, seriously, that's a true story. I met one convert brother who'd come over to Leeds, to a Leeds New Muslims gathering. He'd come over from a neighboring city. And he said, there's this political group on campus who are running the ISOC, and they're always pressuring me to join. Right? I don't want to mention their name. You can guess who they are.
Right.
It's a very politically minded group, obsessed with the caliphate, who are trying to get me to join. How do I put them off? And I said, well, listen, you don't speak Arabic, do you? And I said, well, all you have to do, take any Arabic book and just walk around campus holding it under your arm. Just do that. They'll assume you know Arabic. They'll leave you alone. Right? He came back a week later. He said it worked.
They were rebuffed.
Yeah, but he said he changed it slightly. He didn't take that. He took some large book in English about usul al-fiqh,
Yes.
the principles of Islamic jurisprudence. He said, yeah, I took that, I put it on my arm, and I just
Is that
walked
the
around.
one by Kamali, that big monster one?
He just walked around campus for a week, and they left him alone. Because they said, oh, he studies, he reads, he thinks, he's inquisitive.
So they went back to sort of go for the jahil ones, go for the ignorant ones.
Exactly. Go for the jahil ones.
Right. Now, when you set up this Knott's New Muslims, what was the response that converts had to this, and what was the response to the wider community in that order?
Okay.
Were you trying to pattern after Leeds New Muslims, or did Nottingham Knott's New Muslims have a specific need that Leeds didn't?
I wanted to do something for Leeds New Muslims. I found Leeds New Muslims was excellent, because I see it as two sides. I see, like, if you want to support converts, you have to do two things. There has to be the education side,
right,
where they're learning fiqh and creed and Arabic and so forth, and then there's the social side, where they actually get to meet other Muslims and possibly
form relationships,
maybe get married.
Yeah, and
I found that Leeds New Muslims was absolutely fantastic on the social side, but lacking on the education side. Because there wasn't I didn't see any formal study of fiqh, of theology. I didn't see any of
there
that.
wasn't enough going on to feed them on that area. So
Yeah.
although the social matters were being fed, they were kind of starving in terms of
So they're doing all the right things on that aspect in terms of, having iftar gathering during Ramadan, having a nice Eid gathering, which I thought was a really beautiful idea.
Yeah.
Because they don't have their own families to have Eid.
Sure.
So they
Some have been ostracized as well.
exactly. So to have a big to rent out like a hall and have a big Eid gathering.
Those were very successful as well.
Yeah, these are excellent. Those are beautiful ideas because that really helps people. But then on the education side of things, so I thought, okay, if I do something in Nottingham, I want to have social events going. But at the same time, I want to have fit classes running. I want to have Arabic classes running. I want to have theology classes running.
Okay, so what was missing that Knott's New Muslims was required that Leeds, because you mentioned Leeds is missing classes, but it has the social function here. Did Nottingham have the theology and everything and just not the social class, or was it missing both?
Well, I mean, before I started it,
Yeah.
it's just the fact that Nottingham is very different to Leeds. I mean, I don't know. I noticed here there's not really there wasn't like a grand mosque even. There wasn't. No one was doing a major new Muslim project here.
Right. I mean, Nottingham sort of has these 27 mosques or masjids that are sort of spread around, dotted around the landscape.
Yeah.
And they're just they each have sort of sectarian models.
So no one's really doing it. There was one imam who wanted me to do it with him under his masjid.
Right.
But then when I asked the few convert brothers how to do it, they said no, let's keep it independent. So we decided to do it independently.
Okay.
But then it did dawn on me. Like it just struck me one day thinking about it. I thought, wait a second. These new Muslims, not new Muslims. Wait. This whole idea of a new Muslim organization. Why do we have this? So this doesn't exist in Muslim history.
There's a deficiency.
It's just no. You become Muslim, and that's it. You're just taking.
I mean, is there a Moroccan Muslims Muslims thing?
No. There's these things.
They're just sort of incorporated in.
Exactly, you just incorporated it in. It's just a natural flow.
You never went to Cairo and found like a Cairo New Muslims project.
No. And what became really, really disturbing, I noticed especially with not new Muslims, was that I set these things up and I think, okay, I want to help converts. So I want to have social events. I want to have Arabic classes or fit classes or theology classes. And lo and behold, Pakistanis are showing up.
Okay.
Because they want to learn.
Right.
Or Asians or other people, they're showing up. I mean,
so there's things that are happening in-house that are preventing them from getting the proper.
Yeah. So it tells you, okay, so
what's happening to them?
Exactly. So I'm thinking these people, they're the ones who run all the messages.
Right.
I'm just this single guy by myself
trying to cater to converts.
Trying to cater to this constituency, which is quite small.
Right.
Just a handful of people. I'm just trying to cater to them. I was doing theology classes out of my house. I was doing fit classes. Those were at Nottingham Trent University. I became an Arabic teacher at Nottingham Trent University officially.
Next thing you know, half of India's at your house.
Yeah, I was teaching elective course. So I was teaching all these things here in Nottingham, and Asians are showing up. They're coming to the house to learn theology. They're coming to the Arabic classes. They're coming to the fit classes. So that really got me thinking, like, okay, this is serious.
Problem's greater than you thought.
Yeah, it's not just converts who need help. It's people at large that need help.
Right. And did you find the Pakistani problems were on the same level as the convert problems, or were they greater?
Allah knows best, but they're definitely the same. They have problems because they don't learn. It's not just the converts who have problems, but it's like if you look at the Anglosphere Islam that whole, there is no systematic studying going on. It's just not happening.
Right. I mean,
especially in the masjid, there's no regular class for people to go to where they can learn their fiqh and their theology. It's not happening.
Right. I mean, we're talking about not new Muslims, and we're pointedly using the past tense.
Yeah.
My immediate question is that I think listeners want to know is what happened to Knott's New Muslims, and what was the convert response to Knott's New Muslims? Like, when you started this organization, you tried to start it from the grassroots to create something to cater to them. What was the convert response to having done this?
It's quite mild, to put it mildly.
Lukewarm.
It's lukewarm. I mean, some brothers showed up.
Did you have? I just want to make sure I understand this. You started an organization for the assistance of converts, and you had detractors. from starting this organization?
Yeah, because again, I think if you look back,
Sorry,
I know, but if you look back at it, because we ran a website, then we started a Jumu'ah, which you were the imam for,
right?
To do something in English and to bring people up, and I was really, but thinking back now, 2020 hindsight, is I think back to a lot of the Karma brothers I knew, and I'm starting to think, and Allah knows best, that there were other motives and intentions at play. That these people did not come into Islam with the same motives that I had.
Right.
Because my concern is conviction, and I'm trying to get to the bottom of things. I want to grow in my faith. I want to learn my fiqh. I want to get on with my theology. I want to learn Arabic, and I want to grow. I'm not really, the social stuff is great, but that's not the main reason why I'm here.
Right. I mean, I don't know how to put this. How long did Not New Muslims last, for lack of a better word?
3 years.
3 years.
Because I moved as well.
Okay, so it lasted for 3 years until it collapsed under its own weight, or
no? Because it just I had falling. Some brothers left. Brothers fell out with me.
Right.
Brothers.
Why would converts that are, what were they, overwhelmingly white for the most part?
Yeah.
Okay. Why would converts, overwhelmingly white, most likely having the same needs and requirements that you had, what on earth would they be doing falling out with you and leading to the shriveling or complete disemboweling of this organization? Why would this happen?
Okay. I don't think I was meeting their emotional, psychological needs.
Right.
Because again, one of the most, because I was very much seen as divisive.
Okay.
Because people.
Are you sort of talking out of turn, or
no? They because the topics I rate, because I stress so much importance on knowing your fiqh, knowing your theology, and I wrote, it's on my blog now. It's called The Guide for New Believers. That started off as the Not New Muslims Guide for New Believers.
Okay.
And that was on our website.
Right.
From 2005 2008.
Okay.
And in those things, I give advice about everything. I talk about introduction, how you become a Muslim, how to study, where to go. Because again, I noticed no one had done this before.
Okay.
No one actually written out a guide for new Muslims.
So you're literally pioneering. You're in the wild, wild west, and you're the only cowboy.
Yeah, and I said to the brothers, I'll do this, because again, I'm doing this for myself. I'm funding the website. I'm paying a bill every week for the website. I'm paying for the Jumu'ahs to rent the hall.
Right.
I'm doing this by myself, and I'm taking the time to write it because I thought, listen, we need to have a
So wait a minute. Sorry to interrupt. You didn't have any financial backing?
No.
Did you have moral support?
From my wife, from you.
Right. Okay.
Because you're obviously the imam. I'm studying with you at the same time.
Okay.
But I wrote that whole guide, and I put out. And that guide includes, there's an introduction, there's how to study Arabic, how to study fiqh, there's a huge reading list.
Right.
There's an appendix covering like loads of.
I remember that time with the reading list.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember that time because you'd created a reading list, and then you had spoken to me and said, okay, well, maybe you can create another reading list so that way they can sort of have two options or something like that, because that was around the same time as the HTS thing.
Yeah.
So the reading lists were both there. We even had pictures of the books so they could see them and everything else.
Yeah, or links.
Links or something.
So links
like
to Amazon, and so forth. And then at the end, I had like appendices warning them about cultic beliefs. The cults. There's certain organizations will say this is false because of this and this, and all of the evidences.
And how was that met?
Terribly. Because one Karma brother was like, "You did this without our consent." I said, "Well, first of all, I'm the emir. Number two, this organization is about helping new Muslims." So
did they understand what emirship was, or did they?
No,
right.
No. It was just. It was just criticism. I regularly got criticized for being, like a narcissistic megalomaniac. Like as in, I'm doing this. They didn't use those words, but it's like this organization is all about you.
Right.
This organization is all about you. It's about promoting you.
Right.
Right. At one time, it was called. One brother said to me, "No, this is about you. This is actually the Abu Ja'far Appreciation Society."
Right. Right.
Right.
I'd never been to a single meeting.
Never been to a single meeting. But but just because you helped us with the khutbah, you did the khutbah for us and then led the prayers for us. Because, and again, my response also was I was trying to say to them, no, this is someone who actually cares about you. This is someone who's trying to provide knowledge to you. And you're going around to all these other imams who don't care about you, and that was a huge argument we had.
So these arguments are happening in meetings.
Yep.
Okay, so wait a minute, hold on. So
I was
you're
way too patient with them. Looking back.
so
I was
you're
way too
having
patient.
you're having what, weekly or monthly meetings or bi-weekly?
I think it's bi-weekly.
Okay, so you're having these bi-weekly meetings.
Yeah.
You're trying to keep minutes. You're trying to keep
Yeah.
structure. I mean, what was coming out of these meetings?
Well, what I realized with
Was it just arguments, and then you're like, okay, this has got to get done.
yeah,
So you just had to do it yourself.
I think the few things we could agree on were the occasional event. I think we did that one event that was a success. That event we did in St. Anne's, if you remember.
Sure, at the Chase
So,
Center.
so that was an event that was a success.
All right, that was a
That was a mitigated success.
Nottingham Chase Center.
That was we got McNamee to come down, and there's a calligrapher brother from Birmingham. came down.
That's right. That was in Nottingham. It was at the Chase Center
Yeah, yeah.
in St. Anne's.
Yeah, this was 2006, I think.
Yeah, way
and that was a success, and that went really well. But then we couldn't replicate it because of all these, these issues. And Allah knows best the full story, but it was a struggle because I was I was going to say this. One big argument we had was, is there such a thing as a Muslim community?
Okay.
Right? And it was me and another Punjabi brother who was with us, who was helping us out at the time. And he saw himself as a new Muslim. You know what I'm talking about? He saw himself as a new Muslim at the time because he hadn't been praying his whole life.
Yeah.
And he'd just become,
As far as he's concerned, he says a Shahada, jumped in, and he's sort of there.
And he was really supportive.
Right.
And we tried to say to a room full of converts, we said, listen, there is no quote unquote Muslim community here. We have Pakistanis, we have Bangladeshis, we have Arabs. They happen to be Muslim.
Yeah.
But we're not really part of a community, right?
So then just before you get back to hold that point, hold that thought. How did the wider community, and the majority community I'm presuming is Indo-Pak,
Yeah.
how did they perceive Knott's New Muslims as a project? How did they perceive you?
They didn't really say anything until the Jumu'ah started.
Right.
When the Jumu'ah started, that's when a few imams got really angry. They saw.
I think you wound up in the Nottingham Post as well.
Yeah, that was the guy. Was the guy?
James Smith.
Yeah, he came down.
Nice guy.
Yeah, he's a nice guy. He did a nice project for us. But I think they saw us as divisive. They saw us as a threat. I was like, why? We're just trying to take care of our own needs. Because again, you have to go back to that point. If we're doing this for converts, we're trying to do our own thing, our own organization. What does it say about them?
Right.
It makes them look bad, obviously. So they're going to be angry.
And they might be thinking that you're trying to found some type of super group to demolish their thrones or whatever else.
I'm a threat to the power.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we had this meeting, and these other convert brothers just were not having it. They thought it was a really nasty thing to say. There's no Muslim community, and I said, well, listen,
Right.
how many of you are actually married to this community? And none of them were.
So no one of the converts that was in that meeting with you, none of them were married to British-born or foreign-born Indo-Pak women.
No, not at all. Even though they've been around for several years, they knew them. Some of those Muslim brothers actually learned some Urdu.
Right. Were they treated with contempt or?
No, it was
They just made that decision?
It was just politeness, and we'll keep you at a distance.
Right. So they're like, okay, you're Muslim, that's great, but hands off our women.
Yeah.
Right.
All those Muslim brothers, from what I remember, they all ended up marrying Somalis.
Right. Which says something about the welcoming nature of Somalis.
Yeah. They all ended up marrying Somalis, and from out of town,
Right.
from other parts of the United Kingdom. So, what does that tell you about this quote unquote Muslim community in Nottingham?
So I just have to get this straight, so I make sure I've got all this together right. So you've got converts, overwhelmingly white. I understand there are some that were Jamaican.
Yeah, there was one Jamaican brother.
There was one Jamaican brother.
He was different. He was very good.
Yeah, they're overwhelmingly white.
Yeah.
And these people have become Muslim. They're from Nottingham. They're living here, and they cannot marry the women here because of certain blockages or roadblocks that are in their way. And they are able to somehow access Muslim sisters from another community that they have less in common with, because Indo-Pak and whites are Indo-Europeans. They have less in common with them. These people that are coming from East Africa, they allow them to marry their daughters, and they bring them back to Nottingham. And they still are opposing you and fighting against you in these meetings.
Yeah.
Right. So what finally leads to the point where Knott's New Muslims? Because I remember seeing this where I went to check the site on a regular basis just to see what articles are going on, because I couldn't go to the meetings because I had my own children chasing me and getting after me. I had my other obligations to deal with, but I check it every day or every other day. And at one point I go on there and I see the statement, quote, Knott's New Muslims is no more. And I thought, no more?
Yeah, I wrote that on my blog, because what happened was, in the spring of 2008, I was doing a fiqh class because I just finished this short text of Shafi fiqh called Risat al-Jamia, and I memorized it and I got an ijazah. So right away, because that's what I've been wanting to do. I wanted to get some fiqh down and start teaching it. So right away I set up a class, like a weekly class. We rented out a room at Nottingham Trent University. And, not all of the converts came. Some converts came, some didn't. Some Asians came. Which again, is indicative of this.
So you're still getting the same atmosphere you had from the Knott's New Muslims meeting.
Yeah, but I'm trying to take this knowledge forward. I'm trying to teach it. Then my overall financial situation was not great.
Right.
I couldn't find full-time work. The job at Nottingham Trent University was part-time.
Did this Knott's New Muslims project have anything whatsoever to do with sort of some of the draining of your finances, or
not too much?
Right.
It was only like maybe what was I spending on it? Maybe £100 a month or something.
Okay, so it was more of an emotional drain.
Yeah, it was a mental strain. People were just stressing me out, unbelievably. And I really, towards the time, I had to put my foot down with certain brothers and just say, listen, I don't want nothing to do with you. You're not going to be mentioned on the website anymore. I'm not going to promote anything you do. Get away.
So wait a minute. You actually had to tell people, again, this is what I'm having a hard time understanding. These are people from the same, it would appear, ethnic background as yourself, that you had to tell them, do not have any further contact with me. And I'm not making reference to you on the website anymore because the relationship had become so toxic that it was no longer tenable to continue with.
Yeah, because I think one of the
this is just incredulous.
Yeah, well, one of the things I mentioned, or one of the things I noticed at the time, was, and it's a problem I find with Anglosphere Muslims to this day. Not just converts. It's a problem for Muslims to this day.
So this is a wide phenomenon. It's not localized. This is something national.
Yeah, I've noticed it's just dealing with people just online, dealing with people from, whether they're from New Zealand or South Africa or wherever. I've noticed this thing. Whereas, out of everyone in that group, I would be the only one who studied Arabic, especially to that level. I'm the only guy studying fiqh. I'm the only guy studying creed. I'm the only guy translating stuff, right? I'm the only person at that level in that group.
Do they have any impediments that were stopping them from reaching the same things you were doing? I mean, what were their impediments? Do they have the different background? Were they more impoverished than you, or what was their?
No, Allah knows best. I don't know, but my point is, they did not see that as giving me more right in any way, shape, or form, as having the right to say something that they didn't say. So I had no authority because of that.
Right. So the majority could overrule you, even.
Yeah.
Though
No, they didn't care what I have to say. We try to have meetings. They try to have meetings. They try to arrange these meetings, for example, and they'd say, we have this meeting, and we have to talk about dawah, right? So there's a big obsession with dawah. We have to have this. Now, dawah, of course, we're supposed to do that.
Calling people to Islam.
Calling people to Islam. There's nothing wrong with that. But you have this big meeting about it. You invite people from all kinds of weird groups and backgrounds.
So now we're talking about, you're having your Knott's New Muslims meeting.
Yeah.
But members of the Knott's New Muslims project are bringing in outside people.
Yeah.
That everyone doesn't know.
Or they're having other meetings. They're inviting me to them, and then.
So they're creating their own. So what's happening is like a group within a group. It sounds to me like there was kind of like a soft coup they were attempting to.
Well, I wouldn't say a soft coup. It's just a soft reluctance to follow. I mean, but it gets this point where these people are talking about dawah. They're talking about dawah, and I'm saying as the Emir, I said, listen, how are we supposed to call people to Islam when they become Muslim? What are we going to do for them?
Sure.
What are we going to teach them?
Right.
Who are they going to marry? Like, think this through.
What was their response?
Right? They weren't interested, and that's
so you explained this to them,
Yeah.
and they wouldn't answer the questions, or they couldn't, or what was?
There's no because the response would be, if there's a meeting, there was one meeting, one of these Dawah meetings I was invited to, with all kinds of people. Some people I didn't even know,
Right.
and everyone who's asked to speak is basically giving a, I don't know, it felt like being a rap battle convention or something. Everyone's just standing up and flexing, and this is why Dawah is so important. To me, it was cringeworthy.
Right.
And I texted my wife subtly and said, "Please call me and tell me to come home."
Right.
So she called.
You needed an out.
I needed an out. Yes, honey. And I told my wife, "You'll call me and make it sound urgent."
Yes.
So then I left, and I left speedily.
Right.
But then I was.
You told them something was burning on the stove.
Yeah. My wife needs me. Gotta go. And so I left, and then what happens is I get told, someone relates to me and says, "You left the other day, and some of the brothers were really offended. It's like you act like you know it all."
Right.
And I'm thinking, well, in a way I do. Because I'm studying theology, I'm studying fiqh, I know what I'm doing.
Right.
You guys are not studying, but you're trying to just ignore that fact and to think that what.
So what were they trying to do? I mean, what were they? Why were they not studying or doing these things? Was there depression at work? Was there? I mean, what were? I'm trying to understand, because I mean, it's not a banana republic in the sense that it's just got some type of ruler dogging over it, but it sounds like a banana republic in the sense that it's just this ramshackle organization that's just constantly in flux.
Yeah.
Why were these people having this problem? I mean, these are all converts to Islam. I mean, is this a normal phenomenon among converts in the Anglosphere, that this condition that they're in?
That's a hard question to answer. I mean, Allah knows best. It's just, again, I think it just goes back to what people are looking for when they become Muslim. Are you primarily there for conviction, or are you looking for, is there other needs to be met? Your social needs, your emotional needs, your psychological needs.
Right.
And if you're not looking for truth necessarily, because that's how I saw some of these brothers. I actually said to myself, these people are just the enemies of certainty. They don't want certainty, because certainty means responsibility. Responsibility means hard work. They don't want that.
Right.
They want to be taken care of. They want, and that's what I noticed in some of these meetings. That's the way some of them would talk, like but I'm a new Muslim, and there's all this victimhood.
Right.
It was coming forward. And so I had to say to myself, okay, if you're going to be part of Not So New Muslims, I said with this common organization, this is a big mistake I made. I said, listen, the organization has to be split into helper and helped, right? So
right.
If I'm having a meeting, it should be the people who want to help.
Right.
If you've got knowledge to share, or you've got a house that we can host a gathering, or you want to help us do the logistics of renting out a place for an Eid dinner or whatever, then you're a helper.
Okay.
Right? But then you have other brothers who are clearly stated they just need help.
Okay.
Right? And you can't be both.
Right.
That was the biggest problem. So like,
now, when you made that statement, did some feel you were patronizing them or talking down to them?
It wasn't a statement I made. I did relay that to some people privately, especially like the Asian brother who was with us. I relayed that to him, but it was like too late in the game, and this was not long before the thing closed down. I realized.
So this last incident where you were speaking to the Asian Muslim brother that saw himself as a convert and some of the other brothers in private, this was like the meeting subsequent to the end of Not So Muslim.
Yeah, pretty much, because there was one brother in particular who was like that, who was sort of fluctuating. So on the one hand, he would be like, okay, I want to do this. So again, he's in helper mode. I want to do this. We should have a Dawah meeting. We should do this or this. Okay, and then it's like, all right, so now you're in helper mode.
Right.
But then he would do something drastic, or do something that would cause someone to want to fight with him, or he'd cause some issue. And then we'd say to him, we'd confront him about it, say, what happened? And then he flips over to helped mode.
Right.
Now he's in victim mode.
Right.
And then he'd say, okay, I'm sorry, I need help, I've had issues and problems. And then he'd say, okay, give me some time out, I'm not really well. I'll say, okay, fine, take some time out.
Right.
But then he'd come back like a week later. Right. All right, let's go back to a Dawah meeting. Say, yeah, but you just said that you need time off. Who told you that?
Right. So were you ever concerned about your own physical or mental or emotional safety during this time?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I would say that. But alhamdulillah, Allah pulled me through, because what happened, and this is just, as soon as I finished teaching that fiqh book, when I got the ijazah, as soon as I finished teaching that fiqh book, events started moving really fast.
Right.
And 2 months later, I was out of the country. 2 months later, I was in Morocco. I was out.
So it's like you were put in a different place.
Yeah, Allah just took me out of this place. It happened like really quickly.
Is that the norm in your life, that often when you're in a situation or in some type of jam, the relief will come just suddenly and you'll get just pulled from one place and put in another?
Alhamdulillah, it is usually like that, but it's not always the case of being moving from one place to another. It's usually a case of just, situations will change. Alhamdulillah, Allah, so far in my life, Allah has not left me in like a dire situation for too long.
Right.
And
it's just when you're done someplace and he's
Yeah.
decided, he's decreed, and he said, okay, you've done everything that you can do. You've
Yeah.
done what you're supposed to do. Now it's time for you to go somewhere else.
yeah, and that was it.
Right.
And then going to Morocco, that just, again, moving back to around 2008, things just got better and better from there on in.
Right.
And I just did not think about I didn't think about coming back here again.
Okay. So having closed the door on that entire chaotic chapter in your life with not Sunni Muslims and the events that followed, is it safe to say or to assume that that was some, if not all, of the inspiration for you putting the pen to paper or the opening up and starting the file on the big step? Is that safe to say that that was sort of the driving force on what started that?
That's part of it. I don't actually talk about Nasrus in the book. I just I might refer,
Probably too painful a memory.
Yeah, I think I might refer to certain incidents, indirectly.
You might have repressed it.
But I was looking at other converts on the whole. I was looking at converts I'd seen in university. I was looking at converts I'd seen, say, in the United States, especially converts who fall into the bracket of, who are now seen as spokesmen for Islam in the West.
Okay.
Who have positions of leadership.
Do they have similar sort of, can you see like there's sort of a similar makeup or personality trait between them and, say, converts here, that you can sort of generally say, okay, listen, the problem with converts is like an Anglosphere wide thing?
Yes, because the more I look into it, and I look back at the converts who, let's say they became Muslim in the 1970s or the 1980s, especially the early 1980s.
Sure.
When I look at them, I see this issue, and I think it goes back to conviction. I think these people do not, I'm not saying, again, let's be clear, I'm not saying that people don't believe, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that conviction was not the sole motive or the dominant motive for becoming Muslim.
There were other things at play.
There are other things at play. And one of the things I talk about in the Big Step, because I said there's a chapter, I think it's chapter 2, it's called Who Really Cares About You? Who's going to take care of you? And I said, you might find political organizations, right? And I said, they're probably going to waste your time because they're going to have you marching, they're going to have you demonstrating and making placards and stuff like that. You're not going to be learning with these people. You're not going to be growing with these people.
Sure.
Then you're going to have spiritual organizations, what we call Sufi tariqas, and there'd be some similar things in there that they're going to be, you might be doing a lot of spiritual stuff and dhikr, but are you going to be actually progressing in your knowledge?
Concrete affairs.
Yeah, that's not, if that's not happening, then that's not tariqah for you to join. And then the third group I mentioned was, and I called them, not necessarily lovingly, the hippie converts, because looking back at what they've done over the years, and I lay it down as 4 things. Like there's fiqh of minorities, this so-called Salafi Sufi Unity Pact, the Mardin Declaration 2010, and most recently the Study Quran.
Right.
And I did talk about a good friend of mine who wrote an article about it on my blog, Abu Nur al-Mizzi. I talked to him about it. It's his pen name. Is we started asking, well, okay, what is with these people? Like, what is their psychological makeup, so to speak?
What's driving them to make these decisions?
So our theory, on the theory that I put down in the book, is that these people, when they became Muslim back in the 1970s, they must have seen it as radical and counterculture and anti-establishment. It was chic and trendy and hip and cool.
And that's interesting because those people, if in the 70s, their 60s or 70s, they're in their adulthood, that means they're rebelling against the normative 50s culture of their parents,
Yeah.
which would have been Christian, which would have been conservative,
Yeah.
which would have been based around society and the home and
Traditional family
well-known
values.
well-known gender roles.
Yeah, as we discussed in the other blog.
So it's like, what are they bucking against
Exactly.
when they jump and do this? Where are they trying to get to?
Yeah. So those people became Muslim, and then we thought it through. We thought, okay, maybe that was the case, that from the 70s onwards, being Muslim was cool. It was a hip and trendy. It was, you were anti-establishment. You were radical. You
wanted social justice and
yeah, these kind of things, right? And then I thought, for example, Spike Lee's movie Malcolm X.
Sure, that influenced a wave of people.
Yeah, but that's part of that. It's cool to be a Muslim thing, and then 9/11 happens, and the tone changes. And one of these prominent spokesmen for Islam in the West, and as I put in my book, and I actually found the quote online.
Yeah, and the wave, and it's like at that point, it's like it's watching the tide come in.
Yeah.
All those sandcastles that have been built just came in and just wiped everything out.
Yeah, and he, this prominent spokesman for Islam in the West, the actual words he uses, because he had gone to the White House after the 9/11 attacks and he met the president and so forth. He goes back and says, we need to change our discourse. And so then I say, well, how did the discourse change? Well, then we got fiqh minorities and the rest of it.
Sure.
So what we were thinking, I was discussing with his brother, is another thing I noticed was that all these guys, or the vast majority of these quote-unquote hippie converts, is that in the 1990s, they were putting out loads and loads of videos and audio cassettes. Just Google VCR if you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Or was it RCV?
Or cassette.
Cassette.
Yeah.
And on those tapes and recordings, there are lots of sort of inflammatory statements.
Sure.
Right? Where they talk about, the Jews or such and such.
A lot of browbeating and chest beating.
Yeah. A lot of the stuff, may Allah curse the rulers of the Muslim world.
Hollering and screaming.
And يُخْلِدُونَهُمْ فِي النَّارِ and all this stuff. And I remember thinking to myself, even when I was, because I used to try to find some benefit from them in my university years. Yeah. But even thinking to myself, like hearing them speak, and they're giving these lectures, and they're in their 30s or their 40s at the time, and I'm thinking, wait a second, some of the stuff you're saying, this really radical stuff you're saying, this controversial stuff you're saying, I wouldn't say that, and I'm 22.
Yeah.
I'm 23. I don't.
That's the time where you would really have some serious zealotry because you're in your 20s.
Yeah, so I was like, but you guys are in your 30s or your 40s. Because because I look at their birth dates. These people are born in 1960 or 1955, and here you are in the 80s and the 90s,
ranting.
Exactly, just blowing your top. And I think it was just the other day that you and I were looking online at these, because these people do nowadays these images online.
They look like speech bubbles.
Yeah, it's like a speech bubble and a picture of the person. And we found one. So one is one of these prominent spokesmen for Islam in the West. A picture of him, and then it's called Sufi quotes, and he says something, religion doesn't divide us, it unites us, yada yada yada. That looks all pretty. And then right next to it on Google Images, there's a quote from him from 1995. Yeah. And he says, "The Jews are the most racist."
Yeah,
and something.
It's like trashing Judaism.
It's like the exact same person. So what happened?
Yeah, and it's like there'd be no issue if there was a level of consistency.
Yeah.
Or if the individual came out and said, "Hey, listen, I've changed.
Yeah.
I've evolved. My positions have evolved." But you see, those and individuals like them were coming into this internet age.
Yeah.
Where you couldn't just simply evolve like you did in the 80s.
Yeah.
And just, okay, it's buried, that's it now. You'd have to go to a local library to find out if someone had flip-flopped a lot or whatever else. It's like, no, this is the 90s going into the internet age where stuff can get dug up.
Yeah. Exactly.
And, hey, wait a minute.
Yeah.
You said here that the sky is blue, and here you said it's green. What's going on here?
Yeah. So a lot of those guys, that was the humorous thing, because after that sort of about face after 9/11, which if you want to read right now, when you're listening, it's in an article I wrote called "Why Did They Support Trump?" I actually wrote that in December 2015, which explains this phenomenon. Is when they sort of did this about face, and they started appearing more on the mainstream media.
Yeah,
they appear on CNN or wherever, or CBS or Charlie Rose or whatever his name is, and then they would get asked. They say, "Okay, so you're all about peace and unity and all the, but we found this recording of a lecture you gave such and such date.
And they didn't find that sucker. It's been on file for a time, and they've been waiting to spring it on them.
I mean, one of these guys from the UK, and he's based in the UK. He's an academic here in the UK, and I use him as an example to people as why Muslims should not get involved in political correctness, because this idea of hate speech, don't get involved with that, because if you start complaining about what Jews or Christians or atheists or homosexuals say about Muslims, they're going to beat you with the same stick. They're going to open the Quran and say, well, yeah, but what do you say about Jews and homosexuals and so forth?
You will get hung with the same rope.
Yeah, exactly. So I would say, well, don't get involved in it. And sure enough, one of these prominent spokesmen for Islam in the West, who's based in the UK, got on that bandwagon of political correctness, and the government should protect us from offense, and the government, there should be laws about cartoons and all that stuff. And a prominent conservative writer in this country, who happens to be homosexual, Douglas Murray, came across some old Grady footage, as they always call it, old Grady footage from the 90s.
Just happened to see it.
Right. In which this Muslim spokesman for Islam, he's white, says some stuff about homosexuality and calls it an abomination and so on and so forth. And they said... and Douglas Murray said, this is disgusting. This guy's, he's an intellectual. He's a professor at a major British university. He should be removed from his post. This is backward. This is intolerant. Right? All the same things that Muslims say about.
That's it. All the standard language.
All the standard language. This is homophobic. Islamophobic. It's homophobic, and so on and so forth. And this Muslim intellectual, he responds and says, "Oh, that was a long time ago. That was just youthful enthusiasms. That was just one of my youthful enthusiasms," which makes you think, okay, it was something he said maybe on his gap year while he was smoking pot in the Atlas Mountains.
Backpacking.
Yeah, he was just sat backpacking and he took a spliff and just went, "Yeah, I hate fags," or something like this.
Said
right?
something random.
So that's his excuse. But then Douglas Murray does some research into the video, tries to date it, and says, okay, wait a second, you were born in such and such year, and you sped this at a sort of a course, one of these Dean intensive courses, in this, you were 37.
Yeah, that's not youthful enthusiasm.
37.
Yeah.
So you were 37, and you had a teaching post, you were settled in the UK.
That's youthful enthusiasm.
That's youthful enthusiasm. You see, it just doesn't...
Not even social scientists are saying you're not an adult at 37. They might try to push to 26, but 37, you're an adult.
Yeah, and I read that. I thought, I'm not even 37 yet. Yeah. What is this? Yeah. So that's why I see these kind of... So, but back then, if you're thinking about it, back then, before 9/11, it was hip and cool to be like that. Yeah. Because you're being all anti-establishment. Yeah. You're speaking out against the Jews. You're speaking out against... whatever it is, homosexuality. I don't know how hip that was back then, but you're still being counterculture.
That's right. But when the establishment turns around, it's like, kicking the biggest bully in school in the leg, and then he turns around. What did you say? Then all of a sudden it's nothing. Nothing. Yeah. I didn't say anything. So I think that's worthy of consideration in terms of, that the people that are sort of trying to say or put across that they're the voice of Islam. They're the voice of Islam depending upon which direction the wind is blowing. Yeah. And then they will follow that lead. Now, I wanted to get to your book because I thought that these 7 chapters, I've only just started going through the book. I'm going to, when I finish it, write a book review on it. Okay. But I wanted to ask a question on each chapter because you've got 7 chapters in here. They're short and pithy. The book is not an incredibly long read, but the chapters are laid out in sort of a short, sharp way in which each one of them is sort of tacked with an ayah inside of it, or there's a part of the Quran or some point, and then the articles are listed below. This was accessed on this date as sort of a short, sharp shock, right, as Ann Whitcomb would say. Now, the first chapter, chapter 1, is Why Become Muslim? What's the synopsis or reasoning behind that chapter?
Yeah. So the synopsis, we've discussed this at length today, is that it should be conviction. Right. So become Muslim because you are convinced it's the truth. Because that way, you will be a high quality, low maintenance convert.
Okay.
You'll not be a low quality, high maintenance convert.
Right.
And that's why that was one of the things we talked about when we were doing Creed. I remember we were doing Imam Abdul Ghani al-Naim al-Maidani's text, the Sha'rawi on Sunnah. We talked about this about quality assurance.
Okay.
That when someone becomes Muslim, they're looking to Islam, they should have the full picture. They should fully know what it is they're getting into. And one of the things I put in there was there's a statement by Imam Muhammad Mutawalli Sha'rawi rahimahullah made in his tafsir. He said I was in America, and someone asked me. He was visiting. Someone asked him and said, "Oh, why do you have this apostasy ruling in Islam? Why are apostates put to death under an Islamic government?" And he said, the wisdom there is not so much about people leaving the faith, but it's about people coming in. That you don't join this faith on a whim. Know what you're getting into.
So you put this across as a quality control valve.
Exactly. It's quality control.
Right.
That's why it exists. Like if you're gonna be Muslim, you have to be serious. Like once it's like saying we have the ship of salvation. Everyone's welcome aboard, but once you're on board, it's all hands on deck.
Right.
You can't just be a freeloader. You can't just sit around and expect everyone to do everything else for you. You have to work. We want quality people.
Do you think a free and easy approach to converts just being brought in like cows into a barn, do you think that's led to some of the problems and some of the low quality, as we would say?
Yeah, that's actually chapter 2, because chapter 2 leads into I call it the Shahada scorecards.
Right. So what comes after the testimony of faith is what that's chapter.
Yeah, because we have people out there, and I actually have some links in the book you can see people like this who call them, they brag and they say, well, 3,000 people have said the Shahada to me. I've got 500 Shahada. And they're bragging about it, and my response is, okay, where are they? Uh-huh. And then I put in the quotes all about convert recidivism.
Okay, what is convert recidivism?
That's where converts change their mind and leave the faith.
Right. Do you have any stats that you can share just off the top of your dome with listeners, just on something to just give us an idea of what this is like? I mean, is this sort of a cold sore, or is it like a hemorrhaging wound?
It's a big thing. I think it's the majority. I would have to check the footnote again. It's in chapter 2, but it is the majority, I think, because so many of them just leave.
Right.
And I actually put in some stories. Of people who've left Islam, they give their reasons why. They say I was never taken care of. They say I was abused. I joined some organization that just took advantage of me. I was left alone, or no one answered my questions.
Okay.
I was mistreated.
So they're sort of, it's going back to what we discussed about sort of having a support system.
Yeah, exactly. It's not there.
That among Muslims they didn't have a support system. And are these people overwhelmingly white? A lot of them?
Not necessarily.
No.
What I mentioned together is a mixture of people.
A mixture of people.
But in the UK, I'm guessing we're predominantly white because that's the majority of the population. But sure. Yeah, that is the problem. These people, their needs are not being met, whether it's education, whether it's social, and they leave. How
much of this do you think is connected to what some Muslims have embraced? Because some Muslims have also embraced a left-leaning politic, and part of what's in that left-leaning politic is, for lack of a better word, the F white people movement. How much do you think that's got to do with converts being impacted that are overwhelmingly white, or a large majority are white, and then they're sort of being looked over by non-white?
I think that plays a part in it. I don't have any exact data, but I know that what I've managed to do, what's happened with my blog and my podcast over the last few years, especially with my blog, because on my blog I actually I really do try to argue against leftism.
Okay.
And I do see, because I simply see leftists as, these the Labour Party, the Democrat Party. I see these people as basically, they view Muslims the same way they view say blacks or Hispanics or homosexuals or transsexuals. They simply view them as minorities who have victim status, who must be protected, and we're their protectors, and therefore they're going to vote for us.
Right.
That I see that as a basic tactic. So I've read a lot of books and watched a lot of videos by people like Thomas Sowell or Walter E. Williams in the United States, and they explain how the left has done that to the blacks in the United States.
Okay.
And look how good that's done for them.
Right.
And it's kind of the same thing with Muslims, that they're treated this way. They're put into this victim box. They're just meant to complain and whinge all the time and cry about stuff, and instead of actually empowering themselves and trying to better their own state and move forward, they're not doing that. So, and on top of that, I also have just, I really, I mean, I mentioned in the last part about, you know, my family history with communism. I'm not a big fan.
Right.
But I do see it as detrimental. And so what's happened past few years with my blog is there are brothers, there are Muslims, converts I know who are white from the United States who are conservative by nature. They come from conservative families.
Right.
So they find my blog and they're like, oh, thank you. You know, I'm so happy to find this.
Some common ground.
We have some common ground. It's like, because Islam's supposed to be, we're more conservative.
Sure.
We're not. We have these traditional family values. We believe in small government. All these things. Like, why are you the only guy? So that's good, and I think that's helpful because that's what people want to see. Because again, I think a lot of people would consider Islam, when they look at Islam and just see Islam associated with the left or even the hard left now.
Right.
They're put off. I mean, we were talking about earlier today about how there's this phenomenon now in the United States called the walk away movement, #walk away, where people who are like lifelong Democrats, it's the United States movement, people who are lifelong Democrats have reached a point where they're just sick of the party because they say it's so divisive, it's so toxic, it's just full of hatred, it's full of intolerance, it's full of bigotry.
They've sort of thrown their hands up and said, no more.
We're leaving, yeah. And that doesn't mean they're becoming Republicans or Trump supporters necessarily. They're just sick of the way of what the Democrats have become. They're like, I want nothing to do with it. And it goes down with this identity politics stuff. Because it'll be like, so someone would say, okay, I don't get it. Why? Because I'm gay, I'm supposed to vote Democrat, and that's it. Right. I don't have my own personal views on things because I'm part of a minority, because I'm black or I'm Hispanic, or I'm just supposed to vote Democrat.
You have to move as one.
I don't have my own independent thought, because that's the whole thing about this whole this diversity rant that people go on about nowadays. They say, you know, diversity, but what they mean by this assumption is it says, okay, we have diversity. Okay, so let's say we get with three people at the table, it'd be like me, you, and an African American. It's like, that's diversity. But then the assumption there is that all white people think the same, all Arabs think the same, and all African Americans think the same. You're not actually looking at people individuals. It's something that one of the points that Thomas Sowell made in an interview with Charlie Rose back in the 1970s. Charlie Rose said, okay, shouldn't we have diversity at universities? So shouldn't we have, you know, black students and white students together at Stanford University? And Thomas Sowell said, how's that diversity? Yeah. He said the black boy and the white boy will both come from Pacific Palisades, and their dads will both be doctors or engineers or whatever. They're from the same neighborhoods, the same country clubs. How's that diversity?
And what makes you think that Egyptians and Lebanese want to go to the same schools together? Because that's an assumption.
Yeah. That
these people, that just because we want diversity, or everyone, we need to have an engineer in every school. What makes you think these people want to be engineers, or that they want to go to the same schools together?
Yeah.
There may be reasons why. It may not be race-based, but they just don't want to.
Yeah.
Right? So it doesn't allow that. Now, does this lead into chapter 3? Who actually cares about you?
Yeah. So that's where I talk at length about these people I mentioned before. I talk about political organizations. I mentioned Sufi tariqas, but then I go quite at length about the hippie converts and what's happened. Because what's happened since 9/11 is we had the fiqh of minorities, and this is key, because when fiqh of minorities reared its ugly head, that's when the Marajia stepped up to the plate. This is when Imam Muhammad Sayyid al-Bulti in 2001 put out, it was a word of the month on his old website, and he said that fiqh of minorities is a bid'ah, because the argument put forward is that Muslims are finding it hard to live as minorities in these countries.
Okay.
And therefore they should have their own fiqh to accommodate that, and to allow them to live in these countries.
Which in layman's terms would become another madhab.
Yeah, become another madhab, right? They have their own special rules. And so Imam al-Bulti's response was, well, why did Allah legislate hijrah? For example, in Surah An-Nisa 97. And I have a whole podcast on this. It's called The Truth About Migration in Islam. So he said, Allah legislated hijrah. If you as a Muslim are in a land and you cannot practice your faith, you cannot implement your faith, you're struggling with it, then you leave. That's what you're supposed to do. And he said, in the conclusion there, in his article, he said, there we were under the impression that Islam was growing in the West, that it was spreading like wildfire, Islam, the fastest growing religion. And now
That's the mantra.
yeah, that's the mantra. And then he says, and now we see that the opposite is true. Islam is actually being dissolved within Western civilization.
Yeah.
And from that point onwards,
And any attempt, when you have attempts being made at grassroots Islam, that I can attest to, that they try to stamp them out.
yeah,
They try to stamp them out. Any ideas of sort of distributing zakah or creating social programs or after-school programs, stamp that stuff out.
yeah, and that's why I know. So from that time, so this is Imam Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam making this pronouncement in 2001, and then from that time, all these other, especially the ones in Sham, whether it's his son Sheikh Tawfiq, whether it's Imam Muhammad Zuhayli, Imam Rashid Salim al-Qalam, every fatwa after that is just get out, get out, get out. Come back to the Muslim world. Come back to the Muslim world. So I've seen ones. I've retranslated all on my blog. You can read them. They're linked to that blog post about the truth about migration in Islam. There are people asking, okay, I live in Sweden. Like one person asks, I live in Sweden, and I have a job. It's halal, but I only make a little bit of money. There's a job that offers me more money, but there's a bit of haram. What should I do? And the response was, a little halal is better than any haram. And inshallah, you will find a job one day in a Muslim country. This is the attitude. Come back. Should I go to Germany? No. Come back to the Muslim world. Should I go to France? No. Come back to the Muslim world.
Get out of there.
So since 2001, the position of the Maraji, as far as I can tell, and you can back me up, is don't be there. That they like fiqh minorities was like the alarm bell that said, okay, Islam is actually failing in the West. It's failing in the Anglosphere. It's failing in Europe.
Okay.
It's dissolving.
Okay. Which brings me to the point: what is the importance of the Arabic language and traveling to the Muslim world? That's chapter 4.
Okay, so I think it's absolutely crucial. And I think the first thing I say in that chapter is that if you don't know the Arabic language, your Islam is always deficient, and there's no nice way of putting it.
Right.
That's what I say. There's no nice way of putting it.
So Afrikaans, you're a good Muslim brother, but you happen to speak Afrikaans, you won't be a good mu'min, or
you'll be a good believer.
Right.
I'm not saying you can't. I'm not saying you can't be a good believer. What I'm saying is your over understanding of the faith is going to be lacking.
Right.
It's going to be lacking. I'm not saying you can't be a good person. I'm not saying you can't be a good Muslim. I'm not saying you can't pray or draw near to Allah. But your understanding of the faith is going to be lacking without the Arabic language, because that is the language of revelation. It's the language of 99.9% of the literature.
So someone can't become an authority to speak in this religion without access to the Arabic language and the master sources.
Absolutely not. That's not possible.
Right.
That's not possible. The vast majority of the literature is in Arabic.
Right.
And it's a precondition. If you're going to be mufassir, if you're going to be faqih, if you're going to be a theologian,
anything of substance,
you have to know Arabic.
Right.
So my main point in that chapter, getting over it, is how the Arabic language is just going to open so many doors for you, because you'll have access to so many sources. You can read so many things, and therefore you will not be taken advantage of. You will not be abused.
Okay.
Because if anyone says anything to you, you can go check.
You think some of this abuse that's happening is traceable to the fact that the original sources can't be accessed?
Oh yeah,
by
absolutely.
The target.
That's one of the things we mentioned the other day. I think we did our failures, our loss podcast. I mentioned that a lot of these people, whether they're the converts, whether they're these hippie converts, or whether they're people coming from the Muslim world, like Arabs or others who have moved out here, they're saying the things they're saying in English for a reason, because people aren't going to check them.
Right.
That's the way I see it. They're not going to get checked.
They sort of got a free hand.
They got a free hand because they know that they're sort of out of sight, out of mind in terms of the Marajia. They're away from them. So they're out here, and then they can sort of act like their own authorities.
So you can just jump up and just
say what you want and make people feel good and collect the paycheck.
All right. So now chapter 5, which I wanted to know about this one because this made me think, what's this got to do with the topic at hand, which is getting over your childhood? How's that connected?
Okay.
To Islam we're coming into?
Okay. This is really important because
It's chapter 5.
yeah, the assumption is made. The assumption is made when people look at notice especially with talking to Arabs or talking to Pakistanis and other Asians. The assumption is made that we as Asians or Arabs, we have all this cultural baggage, right? We have all this cultural baggage. When we try to be better Muslims, our parents get in the way and tell us don't do this, don't do that.
Culture gets in the way.
Right. The culture gets in the way. I just want to marry a good Muslim sister, but my parents won't let me or whatever it is. But you converts, you're like a clean slate.
It's the F white people thing again, because white people have no culture. You keep getting back to the F white people thing.
Yeah. Right? I mean, and my answer to that is absolutely not, because white people have their baggage. We have our own cultures that we grew up in.
Sure.
And some of us have, some of us have troubled childhoods.
Sure.
Some of us maybe had to deal with abusive parents. Yeah. Some of us had to deal with alcoholism in the family.
Traumas in their life.
Yeah, we've had issues. And that's why it goes back to this, and it goes back to what I said in the previous chapters about quality control, about vetting converts, looking for, you're trying to make sure that when someone becomes Muslim, they are high quality, low maintenance. You have to make sure that these people don't have mental problems. They don't have some sort of deep-seated resentment against the world. And Islam is just be a vehicle for that.
Right. So they're not sociopaths.
Exactly. They're not they're not suffering from some horrible mental illness. So converts are not clean slates, and what they need to do is they need to come to terms with their childhood, and really, I think it's really beneficial to take a step back and really think over your childhood. And if, for example, if you find that you have bad habits, right? Maybe you have certain phobias. Maybe you have certain fears. Maybe you
like a fear of heights or snakes, or a fear of being assertive because you've been told to be quiet so many times.
Exactly. You have a fear of being assertive. You have a fear of taking care of yourself. You won't clean your room. You won't shower regularly, or whatever it is, or you won't take the step forward to actually study and be confident. You have to ask, okay, why is this? Reflect. Go over your childhood. Think, okay, why am I like this? Try to flesh out your past and rectify it. So one of the quotes I gave in there I actually quoted a book called Toxic Parents by her name's Susan Ford, and she has a quote in there which I think is really relevant, which is she says it's not your fault what happened to you in your childhood, but you are responsible for what you do about it as an adult. So you can't use that excuse the whole way through, like, oh, I was abused as a child. Like, okay, you're an adult now. Do something about it. Okay. In the same way, I also twisted a bit, saying, you can't use don't use the excuse of, well, I'm a new Muslim. Don't use that forever.
Yeah, you've been 36 years a Muslim, and you're not new anymore.
You can't keep saying that 30 years later.
It's a brand new car. You've had it for 15 years.
Yeah,
I can't do that anymore.
Right, exactly. That's why the full title of that chapter is Getting Over Your Childhood. You're not a new Muslim forever. Okay. If you actually go to the page, it's like you're not a Muslim forever. You have to stop being a victim. Stop feeling sorry for yourself, and be confident to take steps.
Should some of these people that have the problems that you've outlined, should some of them be seeking professional help?
Possibly. I don't. Because again, that's like a disclaimer.
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah. Or are some of them? I mean, I imagine there may be some of these people who are capable of realizing whatever issues they have and rising above them.
Yeah.
But there may be a group among them that needs to seek professional help and possible intervention with the use of medicine.
Possibly.
Some type of medicine.
Possibly, one of those best. But there should never be this assumption, whether it's the converts themselves or people looking at them. Don't just assume that they're a clean slate. They're just and part of that sort of clean slate understanding or belief is that they've come into Islam purely for a conviction. They were just searching for the truth, and they've got no crises in their life. There are no mental issues, no psychological issues.
So they've come into Islam, sins have been forgiven.
And they're just
fantastic. They're a newborn, just 3-ply tissue Muslim, soft and squishy.
Yeah, they're just ready to go. And that's not the case. That's not the case.
Right. Okay, so then we have chapter 6, culture and media. What was the purpose behind that chapter?
Okay, this chapter was to explain what is wrong with the media, but also to understand the culture, because I'm trying to explain how what Anglosphere culture is like.
So should Muslims that are converts, as well as lifelong Muslims, should they be investing in trying to understand the wider culture around them?
Yeah, I would take that. That's Imam al-Kathir quotes this as well as Imam Abu Bakr al-Ajuri and the end of Kitab al-Shari in his hadith. There's a statement from the I think it's the hadith Abu al-Ghifari, the long hadith about he says Zidni Ya
Right.
Rasulullah.
Right.
And in that hadith there's a quote from the Sufi of Ibrahim alayhi salam,
Okay.
which is Ala mar'in yakun alifan min zamanihi
Okay.
mumskin li lisanihi muqbilan li sha'nihi. So upon a person to know the age he lives in, to hold his tongue and get on with his business. So my understanding for what I'm putting forward here is that in order, if you're going to be living out here in the Anglosphere as a Muslim, you need to understand what's going on around you. You need to understand the culture. You need to understand the culture wars. There is this left versus right thing.
Sure.
There are conservatives versus liberals. There are
You
Republicans
can't afford to
versus-
be in the dark or polarize
Yeah, no,
yourself
you-
and sort of
you- no, you-
go into a bubble.
Yeah, you can't just pull yourself back and then just follow the media.
What about creating exclusive communities and just not venturing out? Will that keep you safe?
No, that's just ridiculous because you're there. The one of the again, Imam al-Bulthi, as he explains back, we're talking about the minorities. He says, and this is not just him. This is just the standard position. If you're going to be in the Muslim world, in Dar al-Kufr, you're about here in the Anglosphere. These are not Muslim countries. Your justification for being here is dawah. You are actually trying to invite people to faith.
Okay.
So, if you're not here to invite people to faith, why are you here?
Right.
And how are you going to invite people to faith if you don't know their language, if you don't know how they think, if you don't know how they act, if you don't know their customs and traditions?
But the argument of some of these people would be, but we don't want to get infected by the Kafir culture and to be devastated, our children to be overwhelmed and all these other things. So
well, then go back to the village in the Punjab. Then I mean, why are you here? I mean, if you're so scared of the white man being affected by him, why are you in his country?
well, they would say. I remember someone was speaking to me, an older fella was telling me this some time ago that we're only doing to them what they did to us. I mean, they came in, they took our country, and we're taking back the Social Security, we're taking back the JSA, we're taking back the income support. They did this to us, so now we're robbing them back.
Yeah.
And so that's that thinking.
It's-
Someone told me, and sorry to interrupt, just one quick point. In certain parts of the UK, and this has been confirmed repeatedly, there are people who have taught that the learning of English is actually sinful.
Yeah.
I can't explain to you, I can't begin to explain to you how mirthful I was. I mean, I was full of mirth at the time that I met a human being that was born and raised in this country,
Yeah.
and he sounded exactly like someone that had just arrived here
Yeah.
from the Indo-Pak continent. I could not believe
Yeah.
that someone had lived his entire. How on earth did he sound like this?
Yeah.
And it's all because coming down to just this idea of, okay, we're going to insulate.
Yeah. And we're victims.
Yeah,
we're
we
victims.
have to insulate.
And that flies in the face of what Allah says this in Surah Ibrahim, ayah 2, was it?
Right.
We've always sent the messenger in the tongue of his people.
Right.
So again, why are you here? Why are you down? I mean, I did get into an argument once over email. Some guy in London, he's the London School of Islamics,
Okay.
and he tends to go. I was receiving his emails somewhere through the Not So Muslims website. Oh God, or the email, and I was receiving this stuff about, and he kept going on about Urdu,
Yeah.
the importance of our kids need to learn Urdu, kids need to learn Urdu, kids need to learn Urdu, and I tried to speak like some sense into him, and his fist just over the head. Well, one of the points I made out to him, I said, listen, Muslims have never had an issue with learning other languages, right? Imam Shafi spoke Persian. Imam Ahmed probably spoke Persian as well,
yeah.
Farsi, right? Or they spoke, or the rumor that Imam Shafi knew Greek.
My grandfather knew a lot of languages.
Yeah, exactly, a lot of languages. And I even came to the point where because in 2003 I did my TEFL course in Hungary. Magyar, that's what they call it. It's Hungary. Because I have an aunt and uncle who live out there. I did a 1 month TEFL course, and Hungary I actually picked up a guidebook. I picked up a guidebook about the history of Budapest, history of Hungary. I was reading it. It was in English. And they talk about the various people that have ruled Hungary, right? So the Romans ruled it, then the Austrians ruled it on the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and the Ottomans ruled it. And now Hungarian is a very, very hard language to learn because it's not related to any other European language.
Right.
It doesn't fit any of the three major language groups. It doesn't fit in with. It's not a Slavic language. It's not a Romance language. It's not a Germanic language, right? It's most likely from somewhere in East Asia.
Okay.
So they mention this book. The Hungarians who wrote this, they say that the Romans never learned our language, and the Austrians never learned our language, but the Ottomans did.
So the Turks.
The Turks, who are the ruling people, they're ruling that land. They don't have to learn the language. They learn the language.
And they're speakers of Turkic, which is an extremely old language.
Yeah, but my point to this guy
They
was...
took the step to actually
yeah,
say, let's go ahead and learn Hungarian.
And they're in charge.
Yeah,
right?
they don't need to do that.
They could have just imposed Turkish or whatever their language. They just imposed it on the people above and said, and wiped the language out. But they said, no, you're Hungarians. We'll learn your language. We're ruling over you. We want to be able to coexist.
Yeah.
We'll learn your language.
You need to transact with
So
them.
here, these people, you're not the ruling party. You're coming here for Lord knows what reason. My guess is the standard of living and the money.
Yeah.
And you're refusing to learn the language?
Yeah.
Well, this is madness. It's utter
30,
madness.
40, 50 years.
Yeah.
And have never learned a language.
Yeah.
Like I mean, I'd never.
Yeah.
Never.
Utter madness. Yeah.
So I don't know an immediate solution to that. I think it's.
Well,
I don't know what it
if
means.
these people have such an aversion to English, then, PIA does direct flights.
It's just
So-
it's difficult to grasp.
Yeah.
Now we have chapter 7. It's the final chapter in the book. Does Islam have a future in the Anglosphere? And should you wait around to find out? It's often said by some people that, listen, we've got to stay on for the long haul because if we all take off, what about da'wah? Islam will be victorious. The sun will rise from the west. And the sun rising from the west means that Islam will become dominant. And we have to be the ones, these footstep soldiers, marching 2 by 2, that bring Islam all over the place. Okay, what should we understand? How should we answer these claimants when they come with these type of arguments?
Okay, well, first of all, inshallah, we will not see the sun rise from the west because that would mean we're kuffar, we're damned for all eternity.
Right.
That's what it means. It means
Right.
we're disbelievers and we're condemned for all eternity because it's a physical sign at the end of time.
Right. So this is actually ignored, I suppose.
Yeah. So the hadith does not mean that at all. No, the future of Islam. Okay, what da'wah?
Right.
First of all, there is no systematic organized da'wah. Right? We have people out here who don't even want to speak English, as we just mentioned.
But they're saying that, Islam is the fastest growing religion in the world and it's taken off, and every day there's all these people. I mean, look at the prisons. Soon they're just going to be full of Muslims because everyone's converting to Islam.
How's that a good thing?
Well, that's the argument though that I'm hearing that it's in the prisons, it's in the streets.
Even though the response to that is a lot of those people are becoming Muslim just to survive in prison.
Right.
As soon as they get out, they're out of Islam as well.
Right.
They're just doing it to get along. No, as Imam al-Bulti made clear, when he saw fiqh of minorities emerge, this idea that Muslims in the West need to have their own fiqh and they need to be separate from the East, and he said Islam is now dissolving. It's actually dissolving in Western culture.
Like salt in water.
Yeah, we can't see it anymore. And I remember the times in Morocco. I was in Morocco in 2001, 2002, and then when I was there again from 2008 to 2012, and seeing, I would be there in the summer times because this Arabic Language Institute in Fez also has the Arabic Language Institute in Fez also has the American Language Center. So it's like a English school during the day. Also, it's English school during the evenings on weekends, and then during the day there's Arabic classes.
Okay.
And those are attended by people coming from, say, the UK or the US, and there'd be these summertime intensives. So I'd be teaching like English intensives, and I'd see these American Muslims coming over, and Moroccans would just be stunned by them. I mean, Moroccans will look at American Muslims, the way they comport themselves, the way they talk, the way they move, and that's not like Moroccans are the most like outwardly amazingly pious people. right? They don't walk around in flowing robes and big abamas. But they would look at American Muslims and just think, what are those?
Right.
Like, why do they do that? And because they notice a lot of things amongst these American Muslims, because they have their understanding now with this ethnic minorities thing. Now, I don't know whether this is said explicitly in their fiqh, and their so-called fiqh, but one of the things the Moroccans notice, as one example, is they notice that there's no concept of khalwa, for example, amongst Americans.
Okay.
So you'd see men and women together alone.
Okay.
Right? You see like a Muslim sister, she got a headscarf on, but she's with a guy who's probably not even Muslim.
Okay.
They're going out to dinner together, or they're going in a taxi together somewhere. They're alone in the classroom together. One of my old teachers actually complained to me about that. He said, I didn't understand. I saw these two Muslims. They're supposedly, committed believers.
Yeah.
The guy's got a big beard, and she's covered up. But I came into my classroom one day early, and they're there in early with the door locked, or closed at least.
Right.
So
you're sort of sitting there thinking about that hadith in al-Bukhari where the Prophet ﷺ said, when a man and a woman are alone together in a room, Shaitan is the third companion.
Yeah.
So you're thinking, okay, well, what's this?
Yeah. So Moroccans, even though people see them as very chilled out and stuff like that, they do have standards. They find stuff weird. They look at Americans as weird. And then there was another time where a Moroccan colleague of mine, he heard a Muslim friend of mine, a brother from the United States who's older. He was talking to another brother from Canada, and this younger brother from Canada, he had a lot of these ideas coming out of the hippie convert movement. Yeah. That's what we call it. And one of the things he was talking about. There's an American guy who's come over, and he's not Muslim, and I'm trying to explain Islam to him, and I'm trying to get him interested. And the Moroccan teacher, he's an Arabic and English teacher, he's just sort of to the side on the computer, and he's just listening to the conversation, right? Now I know this teacher. He's not the most committed Muslim. Let's just say that,
okay.
Right? He has his faults, but he's just there, typing away, probably typing up some tests or some quizzes or something, and you can hear my friend and this other brother talking, and this Canadian brother eventually says, maybe what I could do with this guy is who's not a Muslim. Maybe I could bring him to the masjid or bring him to the prayer room, and he could pray alongside us. Not being a Muslim, he could pray and feel the prayer, right? And at that point, the Moroccan brother is like, just like stops what he's doing and says, "What are you talking about?"
Loses
temper. Like no, what are you people doing? The guy's not a Muslim. What's he doing in the masjid? Yeah. And you're also forgetting that this is also a Maliki country, right? You're not allowed in the masjid.
Sure, the rulings are quite stringent.
You're not allowed. I used to love that.
I just get to stand outside and look in.
Yeah, exactly. I used to love it when I was first there as a student in Morocco. And those days I wasn't wearing like a jalabia. I was wearing the trousers and a shirt. And there'd be this big crowd of French tourists at the door, just looking to the Qarouiyin, and the tour guide would be there, saying, "Look, over there's this, over there's this," and I would just walk right through them, right? And the tour guide would flip out, be like, "What are you doing? Come back!" I'd just keep walking. Allah Akbar. Like, oh, okay.
Muslim, yeah.
It's just fun to mess around with the French. But
now is based upon what you're telling me, the statements you've made, and the arguments you've put forth, in the next coming years, is what's being referred to as Anglosphere Islam. Is that sort of set in the next decade or so, or somewhere near there, to become a separate religion?
Yeah.
To actual Islam is being practiced by Muslims in the Muslim heartlands?
Yeah, because what I was saying, my point, what I think I was saying before was that, so Americans, because Americans are the leader, right?
Sure.
Though Muslims from that country were already back then being seen as weird.
So we're talking about 90s.
Or like 2001.
2001, okay.
Even back then.
Early O's.
Right?
Okay.
They're being seen as, wait a second, what are they doing? Right? Then 2005, another one of these prominent spokesmen for Islam in the West, after that Danish cartoon crisis, which led to various riots, if you remember, in the Muslim world, and stuff was on fire and people got killed. Right. He penned an article, and I've linked it in my article, Why Do They Support Trump? He penned an article, and he said, why is it that these Muslims in the East they do these things, they do these crazy things, they start riots, stuff's on fire, people die. That comes on the news, and people in the West see it, and then we as Muslims in the West, we suffer the consequences, right? Because we're the ones who live with, we're the ones who live with the Americans and the British.
They're trying to build a life over there.
Yeah. All right. So they said they don't. So he said, they don't consult us. They don't understand what we're trying to do. So he said maybe this is 2005. He said maybe the time has come for us Muslims in the West to go our own way.
Schismatics.
Right? So they were talking about this in 2005, about sort of going their own way. And so if you think about it...
This sounds a little bit like the Reconstructionist movement in Judaism.
Yeah, so remember, you've got fiqh of minorities. So they've already on that path of setting up their own fiqh, right? Their own understandings about, what's halal, what's haram.
Okay.
Then they're talking about going their own way. Then they had that quote-unquote Sufi Salafi Unity Pact, which if you've read it, that totally downplays the study of theology.
Right.
Right? Just know your 6 pillars, and that's it. All right? So you don't need to know about seeing Allah in the hereafter. You don't need to know about faith-based salvation, which I mentioned these in the book. All these things that would help you grow in your relationship with Allah. No, don't talk about that.
Okay.
Right? Just be the simple Muppet believer and just...
Islam is a flat plane.
Yeah.
Nothing dynamic.
We're all the same. Let's just get along. So this is how Islam starts to become an identity, as opposed to actual faith.
Right.
And I have a podcast on this, Anglosphere Islam as an identity. Then 2010 comes along, and they have that Mardin Declaration, which in summary says
an abysmal disaster.
Yeah, which basically says that these terms, Dar al-Islam, Dar al-Kufr, these are old, and now the whole world is a Dar al-Islam. We have international treaties, we have international organizations, and this is the most that Sharia can hope for.
Right. Islam 2.0, bring in the dancing girls.
Exactly. So once you say that, okay, so why is the Mahdi coming, Imam Mahdi? Yeah. Why is Isa alayhi salam going to be? What's the Dajjal going to do?
Yeah. That's all this about.
Right? No, we can all go home now.
We're just waiting for the paradise now.
Yeah, life is great.
And in fact, is it here? Because, all these things have happened. We're in a state of peace. The world's no longer at war. Are we there now?
Exactly. So, and again, this is something that Imam al-Bulti, for example, Imam al-Bulti and Imam Ahmad Zuhayli, and this should tell people, if you're listening to this should tell you that the wisdom of the Maraja. I have this in an article on my blog called The Religion of Peace, quote unquote, because this is another mantra that they use. Is Imam al-Bulti and Imam Ahmad Zuhayli in the 1960s, they started talking about this fact. They said that what we're going to see in the West is someone is going to say, someone say on the right side of the spectrum is going to say, Islam is a terroristic religion, right? Their jihad is it's actually just terrorism. It's just murdering and raping and pillaging and violence and so forth. And then they said, before that time, and then they said before the Muslims can turn around and have an appropriate response, someone on the other side of the spectrum will say, no. Islam means peace. Islam is a religion of peace and love.
Okay.
All right? And then Muslims will get swept into that and start saying that.
Okay.
Right? So you're left with this thing of like, okay, well, either Islam is ISIS or Islam, I think the term you coined it, is a big white fluffy teddy bear.
Okay.
When the truth is somewhere in the middle.
Right.
Right? So that's been completely blurred. And then they said that what they're going to try to do is, and they're going to say that, Muslims are this sort of, peace-loving religion. Why? Because now we have all these international organizations and treaties.
Okay.
Right? So they were saying in the 1960s, Imam Ahmad Zuhayli, because Imam Ahmad Zuhayli, he wrote it in his PhD thesis called, I think it's called Al-Harb fi Fiqh al-Islami, something like this. And then Imam al-Bulti quotes him in his book Fiqh al-Sirah. Fiqh al-Sirah, which is, again, I think I have a second edition, which is 1968. So some 1960s, they're both saying this.
Okay.
That Muslims are going to get sucked into these international organizations and then made to believe that therefore there's no more need for, I'd say the word jihad, there's no more need to struggle, there's no more need to actually fight for anything.
Military conflict.
It's all going to be removed. And now we have 2010 Mardin, Muslims using the exact same wording.
Okay.
Saying we don't have to do anything else, we don't have to do anything more, we don't have to fight. The whole world, that's what it says in the document, the whole world has achieved, peace and stability because we have the international treaties, because we have the international organizations.
When at the time of pinning that screed
Yeah.
there were around 33 wars that were happening.
Yeah.
So I'm in a loss of words to
I
understand.
think, okay, so does that include the Palestinians? Does that include the Cham Muslims? Does that include the Muslims in Burma? Does that include... And I thought it was really
Muslims in
funny.
the Philippines.
What really struck me at that time was, like, within months of this thing coming out, this Mardin Declaration, within months of it coming out, there was a bill was passed in certain states in the United States. I think Tennessee was one of them. What was it called again? It was called the Sharia bill, I think.
Okay.
And I actually read the full thing. I forget the number now. I read the whole thing, and it passed. I think it was in there. It was in the Tennessee Congress, and I think it passed the Senate. I don't know what happened after that. I don't think it was actually passed, but it said we cannot have any Sharia supporting organizations in our state. Right? And they actually list out, they said that doesn't matter whether you're Shafi. They actually list all the madhabs, doesn't matter whether you're Shafi, you're Hanbali, you're Maliki, you're Hanafi.
We do not care.
Whether you're Jafari, whether you're Ithna Ashari, we don't care.
They got everybody. Zaidi.
Yeah, they listed everyone. Yeah. That was quite stunning. And they said, if you are seen as a supporter of a pro-Sharia organization, you will be liable to a prison sentence of 15 years. Right. And a pro-Sharia, what they define as a pro-Sharia organization would be a masjid that claims to be upon the madhab of such and such. You know, if you're on the madhab of Imam Shafi, you're on the madhab of Imam Abu Hanifa.
Always going too far.
You are now this is a pro-Sharia organization, and therefore, and if you pray there, or if you give financial support to that organization, you are a Sharia supporter.
Yeah.
And therefore...
And you're lending material gain.
Yeah, and therefore you should be in prison for 15 years. As I read that, I thought, subhanAllah, if that passes, Tennessee is now Dar al-Harb. You're being persecuted for being a Muslim.
Yeah.
So
gotta get out of there.
So just weird is what's happening. But yeah, that was at the time when you did your article on the Mardin Declaration, and I did my article on Abodes of the Earth to explain this and why these terms exist. Okay. And this is why, again, the same thing goes back. Muslims should not be living there. But what these guys are doing is they've downplayed the theology. They've downplayed the fiqh. Now they're saying there's no such thing as hijrah. There's no such thing as migration from Dar al-Kufr to Dar al-Islam or Dar al-Harb to Dar al-Islam. And then a few years later, they bring out the study Quran. Okay. Which we discussed in a previous podcast, which basically pushes that perennialist idea that, other religions are saved and Islam is not the one true religion, and, other religions, these what they call the previous dispensations. They use this wonderful term, this flowery term. The people of previous dispensations, they can be saved too. And that book was heavily promoted, especially by these converts. Right. They promoted more heavily than anything else, any other book. The Bewley translation was not like that. Normal Quran or any other translation that's come out, in the last 20 years. This was the one, and these people went on podcasts, they went on public, and they said, "This is the translation. This is our book. This is the one that you can give to your neighbor. This is the one that you give to your family member." And they were really, really, really gung-ho about it. But as we mentioned before, they don't want to talk about it. Since that time, and since Brother Abu Nur Mizzi, when he wrote that article in January 2016, which was on my blog, which, incidentally enough, ended up being seen by everyone in the West, including these spokesmen for Islam in the West, I think that kind of threw things off, because Muslims could see what they were doing, and that's when it became really, really clear, because this sort of break between East and West became very, very clear, because there were some Muslim brothers in the UK who were students of knowledge. They'd been in Syria and other countries. They penned an istiftah, they penned a question in Arabic, saying there's this new, quote unquote, translation of the Quran, and includes these, perennialist beliefs, and they listed, they gave some examples, and they sent it out to different ulama. I sent it to Imam Tawfiq al-Bolti in Syria, and he wrote a response in Arabic, and I translated it to English. It's on the blog, and they condemned it. The ulama were condemned. They said, you cannot promote this. Okay. This is haram. This is you're leading people astray. You cannot promote this. Wow. But the response in the East was, or the response in the West from these people was, all they did really was go quiet. They didn't retract the endorsements. They didn't retract the statements. They just went quiet. And ever since the time, whenever they've been confronted about it, they just go quiet. They don't want to talk about it. But why did you do? And all they do, all you'll find that they do is if they are questioned. I've seen a few examples of this recently. If they are questioned about it, they might say something like, "Yeah, it's controversial, but there's still a lot of benefit in it." So what does that mean?
Right.
It's like that's or yeah, it has some flaws. It has some flaws. Like you can't talk about the major theological errors, the blasphemous theological errors in that book. You can't pass those off as typos.
Sure.
Or as use of the wrong paper, or the cover was a bit off.
Sure.
There are serious problems in that book, and if someone does not understand how to study their theology, they will be led astray by reading that book.
Right. I mean, I think then that this book stands out then as sort of a small handbook of addressing a whole medley of issues that we've treated today. So I look forward to reading through this book from cover to cover and then offering some analysis when it's time by doing a complete book review.
Okay.
I think that what has been done today and what you've laid out regarding the book gives something to the listeners to take away and to think, okay, is this something that I need to reflect on? If it is, what do I need to do to now rectify my situation? Because it seems that the book not only mentions problems, but also gives solutions. And those solutions will then facilitate that person in carrying out his life's obligations and to also safeguard himself and the loved ones he may have that are in a similar situation. What I would like to say in closing is this is really an exposition on a matter that's long been coming to the head regarding Anglosphere Islam and this sort of pulling away of this new religion, which is akin to Reconstructionist Judaism. I wouldn't give it the credit of calling it conservative Judaism, because conservative Judaism actually has some trappings. Reconstructionism is ran along the same path that Anglosphere Islam is running across. It's using all the language and the terminology and the focus and the trappings of religion, but speaking with a tongue of apostasy. I'd like to thank Brother Mehdi Locke for his time today and for sitting down and giving us some of his valuable time. I know he'll look forward to having control over his show again and to bringing you on the forward the same level of great programs that he's been giving so far. So it is inshallah our hope that some good will come out of this. And we say Subhanaka Allahumma bihamdika wa ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk innahu ghafurur rahim rahim wa la ilaha illa Allah. Wassalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.